What is up, fight fans? It is time for the MMA plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. We are coming to you live from the number 38 presented to you by Volo. Guys, I want to give a shout out to the whole entire Mile High Sports crew right now. They are doing so many great things across the board in terms of putting out their content, especially right now when it's dead time for the core four sports or for the big sports world out there. It's just on the heels of winter sports wrapping up with their championships in the NBA and the NHL just a couple of weeks ago. NFL is obviously in off season, as well as college football, college basketball, all the big headline drivers, if you will. But as far as the Nuggets go, there is no shortage of off-season talk to be digested. There have been tons of moves that they have made in terms of roster and personnel and upcoming contract talks, so on and so forth, that it's basically, I mean, again, this is just a knuckle dragger's perspective from the outside looking in, but the moves that they've made make it seem like they are going all in to push for a championship this next year. So again, from someone who's kind of on the outside looking in, seeing that they're doing a lot of things to try to improve their product on the court, that to me is encouraging, and it gives me something to look forward to as far as watching. Again, from just a casual fan perspective, I can only imagine what the diehards are getting into as far as the details and the minutia there. The team who doesn't do anything to improve themselves is the Rockies. They are our big old pit stain here for what is otherwise a very high caliber of sports, professional sports quality here in the Denver metro area. The Rockies are currently sitting at 21-71, folks, and they are by far and large on pace to be the fastest team in Major League Baseball history to lose 100 games. They're already basically 3/4 of the way there, and we're not even at the All-Star break. You've almost got to try to be that bad. I don't know the exact math in terms of weeks that the season has been going on so far, but it's basically been since the first week of April. By that math, they're roughly averaging about 1 win a week. That is so bad. That is so bad as an organization. But for all of that talk for the core four, make sure that you keep it locked for the Mile High Sports Network. And guys, I do have to just, I have to give you a little bit of a behind the curtain or break the fourth wall for you. Sometimes I get some of my biggest kicks and thrills out of the week by seeing how many times I can get Danny to break behind the glass and start giggling and laughing over here. And I got it about 3 times talking about the Rockies right there. So that's 3 for me right now, baby. We are running the tally right now.
They're a very laughable franchise.
Easy to put, but I'm glad to be able to. It's like Billy Madden said, don't leave me open, baby, because I'm going to hit it every time. You keep on putting put material out there for us to roast you for it. Well, that's just the way that it is. But make sure that you keep it locked here on the Mile High Sports Network, whether it's the magazine, merch drop, podcast side, YouTube channel, website, all things combined for the network here. Hit that like, share, and subscribe wherever possible. Move it along to the Colorado rundown. We have quite a few events going down over the next couple of weeks. And a lot of these weekends, there's multiples going on during the same weekend, such as this one. And we're going to talk a little bit about each of these events a little bit more in depth. But off the rip, we have CJJC Grapple Games 2 Attack Bands that is happening this Friday, July 11th. Also, this Friday, July 11th, we have Sparta Fight Night that is going down at the Eclipse Event Center. Next weekend, we have Airtight Boxing. The following weekend after that, you have an all-boxing show by Sparta being put on as well. That is going to be July 25th. August 15th, we have Colorado Combat Club making a massive return with what is already a loaded card that is going to be headlined by Bellator and just longtime veteran of the Colorado scene in Grant Neal. You have a highly anticipated rematch of 2 pro flyweights in the area in Micah Haas and Alex Rago. That's going to be a matchup that right there alone, there is No shortage of bad blood between those two guys. They fought a couple of years ago. Rigo has fought one of Micah's best friends to a 1-1 split so far in Juan Rosales. And again, there's just been a lot of unpleasantries exchanged back and forth. When we have real grudge matches and they have the opportunity to go out there and settle their differences with fisticuffs locked in a cage in a sanctioned fight legally, I love it. I'm here for it. That's the beauty of what our business, of what our sport is with fighting, is if you have differences, you have the chance to go in there and let these solve it. Gotta love that being a situation there. Also, that weekend, the next night, you have BYB making their return to Denver for another bare knuckle brawl night. Going to be at the Stockyards. That is August 16th. You have our buddy and George the Buzzsaw Martinez going to be making his bare knuckle debut on the show. George is a guy who he's been around on the MMA scene for quite some time. He's helped out with the prep scene with high school wrestling in I believe it was Denver North, where he helped do some coaching there. He's a guy who, to me, is worth rallying around, especially if you know his story. We'll try to get Georgie on the program before that fight. But again, just a great person all the way around. A guy who's had to go through a lot to get to this point and is continuing to move forward with the most positive attitude and just works his butt off day in and day out. Gotta love somebody like that in this game. Also want to give a huge shout out on that card as she approaches her chance to claim double gold in the process. Courtney Cameron. Courtney Cameron is someone from the Denver scene who every bit of praise, awards, accolades, everything that she has gotten, she has earned. She's somebody who got into the fight game later in life. He isn't the most athletic by any means, but you want to talk about someone who has the spirit of a warrior, who is a fighter at their core and is going to leave it all out there, whether they are battered and bloody or not, will go out there and just fight their heart out every single time and has earned fight of the night type honors across multiple different promotions, across multiple different organizations. There's a common denominator there, and that is the soul and the spirit within Courtney Cameron. And I'm excited to see her go out there and try to chase double gold. She's already won it once in the BYB, I believe, super lightweight championship, and she is going for the lightweight, or it's vice versa. Can't remember the exact order there right off the top of my head, but one way or the other. The opportunity to go out there and become a 2-division world champion, that's incredible, man. I absolutely love seeing people go out there and manifest their dreams into reality. Courtney fought on one of our Combat Club shows in her early amateur MMA career way back in the day, pre-pandemic. I want to say it might have been like Colorado Combat Club 2, something along those lines, back in 2019, like 6 years ago, somewhere around in that range, and is now, like I say, on the verge of a second world championship in a major organization out there. That's, to me, it's a tremendous honor to watch the growth of where some of these fighters go along and how they evolve and just develop within their journey. Real quick, also want to give a shout out on that front. Speaking of fighters who have moved on from the organization to bigger platforms, Isaiah Diggs, a veteran of our Colorado Combat Club cage, also just signed a deal to fight with the PFL. So the former Colorado State University wrestling product, who is now ran that into a undefeated professional career in mixed martial arts, is now going to be fighting in a couple of weeks for PFL. So again, like I say, love to see that some of these fighters who have came up through the ranks here and have fought on our shows are now getting opportunities on much bigger platforms and getting to make their mark in the world. Following from that, we're going to transition into the local weekend preview. This weekend, we have CJJC Grapple Games 2. This is our second edition of our Grapple Games events. The first one was Karjitsu. This one is Attack Bands. All of our Grapple Games events are basically subsections of grappling, if you will. And what these are serving to be is they're a little bit more of a faster, high-paced competition. They're a chance for these competitors to go out there, stay active, especially a lot of them are already booked for other events here in the near future, whether it be fights, additional grappling competitions, so on and so forth. But it's an opportunity for them to stay active, stay just in the mix of competing and getting looks in a live setting, continuing to work on the mental side of things of competition by dealing with the nerves, albeit that it's not a full submission grappling match or a full fight of whatever particular discipline, but you still have to get yourself mentally ready to go out there and compete and try to win. This is also an opportunity for some of these athletes to grow themselves as a competitor, as an athlete, and as a brand. It's important for all of us out here on the local scene who are putting on shows that we have athletes on our cards who are willing to help the business by selling themselves, by selling the fight, promoting themselves, and promoting the event in its entirety. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to evaluate, hey, who's going to be someone who's going to be good to work with? Because just being real, and this is for any prospective athletes that are out there and are listening, I get asked a lot of times, how can I get on shows or how can I get into competing? Well, one of the best ways to put yourself in a position for promoters from any show to want to work with you or to want to give you things favorably or accommodate requests, you got to sell tickets. Plain and simple. You butter a promotion's biscuit, they're going to make sure that you're taken care of on the flip side because they want you to always be in the mix for them. So it's a hand-in-hand sort of combination, but we do have a video queued up here that's going to explain a little bit more conceptually of what you'll see this weekend from CJJC Grapple Games 2 Attack Bands.
Welcome to Grappling Games 2, presented by CJJC Attack Bands. Both competitors will start with a band. They get to choose which leg they put their band on. In the match, there will be three 3-minute rounds. Each round will start with a slap and a bump. Once the match starts, all grappling, all subs are legal. If during the round a band is grabbed, the round is over and that competitor has won the round. At any point in the match, if there is a sub, the match is over and that competitor has won. If during the match you are in threat or danger of a sub and you pull that band, you have won the round. That is the rule set for Grappling Games Attack Band Series. Come see us July 11th. Ticket link is in the bio. Are you in the club?
So there you have it right there. There's an explanation of the rule set of what you can expect to see from this Friday's show for CJJC Grapple Games 2 Attack Bands. I think that it makes for some interesting exchanges out there. You know, as you saw in the video, you might have someone dead to rights deep in a triangle, but if they can reach back and grab that band, well, you know what? Round is over, and the person who was deep in the submission, they won. So I think that, again, like I say, it adds a fun wrinkle to competition. We're looking at some different formats of additional games going forward. We've seen a variety of different concepts that are out there. What would you guys like to see from us at CJJC next? We've seen other concepts out there, such as coffin grappling. We've seen tire wrestling, a lot of different concepts out there that we're entertaining the thought of and just trying to figure out and nail down what are some of the logistics to make these things happen. But again, chime in, let us know. You could reach out at the CJJC Cage on Instagram. If you're interested in ever competing on the shows, make sure that you go to jujitsuclub.co, fill out those applications, and our matchmakers will be able to try to get everything all sorted out for you and get you paired up. The best way for you to get on the big shows is by putting in your applications and working out or trying out, if you will, on these grapple game shows. If you're not an established entity already, you know, some of you out there who listen and follow along, you're purple and beyond, who are experienced and seasoned grapplers. We know what you bring to the table. A lot of these messages are for these competitors who are trying to embark upon this journey and really kind of get the start. Again, everything is always different when you're an established product. But going to run through some of the matchups and the names on this card for Friday's event. We have a 4-man bracket going down. There will be a cash prize in the process. You have a 4-man bracket of Anthony Bendy, the always active 10th Planet product, Owen Body Bar. I mean, every Grapple Games show, every CJJC show, multiple different tournaments in the area. That kid is always in the mix. Another returning competitor, Ty Langevich. And then we have Seth Tumbleson making his debut here on the Colorado scene. Seth is a young kid who trains out of Factory X and Evergreen Jiu-Jitsu, who he's really excited to go out there and start making a name for himself. He's a really young kid. He trains with a lot of killers down in Englewood at Factory X, and this is his chance to go out there and to, really represent that X on his chest and show what he is all about. He is going up against some guys with some considerable competition experience. I'm excited to see how this 4-man bracket plays out, and the wrestling pedigree that Seth has, I think, is something that might fly under the radar a little bit. Attack bands, in my opinion, from the outside looking in, if you have a strong wrestling skill set, you might have an advantage here under this particular rule set. Also on the card, we have Rafael Serrano taking on Travis Rice, once a Marine, always a Marine. Hoorah. You have Easton Ellingson taking on Porabik. You have Jacob Few taking on Silas Castro, Marcus Cushing. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, my friend. We have not had the chance to meet in person and me to figure this out. Iyasu Sefu. We have Jeffrey Howard taking on Diego Ruiz. And then Jessica Stay in Your Lane taking on Angie Gantuga. That's a fight, or that's a matchup right there between those two ladies that I think that they're going to scrap like cats and dogs. We're going to probably see 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and I'm really excited to see the way that those two compete. I know that Angie is very active across the scene here in the Denver area. Jessica has also been very active training out of Black Sheep in Colorado Springs. She's had a lot of MMA fights and kickboxing fights over the last couple of years, this being specifically in the grappling realm. I'm really, it's something that when you cowline the discipline, maybe you realign some of those thought processes. And this, to me, is just two competitors who are going to go out there, and I think that they want to put on a show for the crowd. You have Sparta going down this weekend, as mentioned earlier. In the main event, you have a Muay Thai bout between Dan Wilson and Clem Lacroix. This is a rematch that, to me alone, this is worth the price of admission. I don't care what promotion it's under. If it's on any state level show here in Colorado, whether it was for Sparta, for Combat Club, for Battle, for Guerrilla, for anybody out here, this fight is one that you should want to watch. They fought for us on the Combat Club banner back in August 2023 for the first time. And that was such a fun fight to watch. Clem got the win in that fight. Clem is, I think it's, it's not going out there on a limb or stretching myself too thin to say he is the more technical guy in the process. Dan Wilson, though, is a wild card. Dan is a fighter who he is willing to take risks. He's willing to do some crazy things in the process to go out there to try to win. And he's one of those types who he embodies that full warrior spirit of, I'm either going to go back carrying my shield or come back on it. Again, when you have two guys who have as much experience across the world in fighting and the volume of time that they have both shared, whether it's in a ring, in a cage, whatever the format, no, on a local level, that's a fight that you need to pay attention to and you need to watch. Right there alone, again, like I say, that main event, worth the price of admission by itself. Macy Adkins, she's back on the card. She's always fun to watch. She's an all gas, no brakes type of style. Goes for broke, and hey, she's had some success. She's had some downs, but she's very young in her career. She's hungry, and she is improving with every single time that she takes a step out there into the cage. Any of these young fighters who are trying to be active and fighting with the frequency that someone like she is, no, you got to watch out for them because momentum is a huge thing. And as we saw with the Josh Van situation, being active is huge as far as your growth in your career. Josh Van started training 5 years ago. The man's about to fight for a world title. Being active, obviously a lot of things went right for him along the way, but I think that that's a good example for a lot of these young fighters to learn is you've got to be active, you got to be willing to take the risks and put yourself out there and continue to grow. And I think that's something that Macy is doing by staying as active as she has. A fun young fighter on the rise to watch. Another friend of the program is back in action, Oscar the Moisturizer Herrera. I'm excited for a matchup that is another ladies fight this weekend on that card. You have Riley Colburn taking on Emma Soho. Both of them have fought on my show before. Riley started fighting on my cards for 5280 in Muay Thai when she was a 15, 16-year-old teenager, somewhere around in that range. She's a great young lady. I mean, very respectful, pure class, great to work with. Her mom is awesome. Talked with her a couple of times on social media after she reached out from the commentary. Someone who is dedicated basically their entire life at this stage with her, where she's at in her career and still being so young. She spent the majority of her formative years trying to become a fighter and is on the path to being as best as she can be out there. She is taking on a stiff challenge in Emma the Peruvian Predator Soho. Emma Soho, a veteran of our cage, our ring on multiple occasions. Emma is someone who she has competed and she's been in the thick of things since she was knee-high to a grasshopper just the same. Emma just received her brown belt in the Easton system. She's a regular mainstay in the camp of Mallory Martin, who is the Octagon champion, UFC veteran, so on and so forth. She's tenacious with her style. She is a pressure forward, heavy type of fighter. Might be a bit of a styles clash in the mix. You know, it's been a while since we've seen Emma. Emma's been out of action for a couple of different things throughout the last about year and a half, somewhere around in that range. And especially when we're talking any fighter who is that young in their career and then spends that much time devoted to their craft. That time away, you can almost say in most cases, we can't really expect to see the same fighter that we saw before. We should expect someone who has lots of growth and evolution from what we saw the last time. And that's just the natural arc and the progression of them as a martial artist, as a fighter, as an athlete. Again, this matchup, just as I spoke to from the main event, two of the top women prospects in all of Colorado. If you're someone who supports women's MMA or is a fan of women's MMA, no matter what the promotion, what the banner, what the show, this should be one that you tune in for as well. Two ladies who go out there and they go for broke. They want to put on a show for the crowd. They want to entertain. They want you to be a part of their experience as a fighter. Those are the types that you should attach yourselves to as fight fans and want to watch their growth and progression as they go along. Again, that's that matchup between Emma Soho and Riley Colburn. Also want to give a shout out to my homegirl Kyra Dial. She's back in action on the card. She's training out of Genesis. She has a collegiate wrestling background. She's very successful in our CJJC cage. And, you know, her MMA debut didn't necessarily go her way, or not necessarily. It didn't go her way at all. That's putting it bluntly in that way. But where she runs into a particular situation is there's not a lot of atom weights out there. Fortunately, they were able to find someone to fight her at atom weight. So this will be the first time that she's fighting at 105, fighting someone who's closer to around her size. I think that it's going to be a fun matchup to see right there. That's Sparta this weekend. That'll be at the Eclipse Event Center. Check them out. Check us out at CJJC. Lots of action to digest this weekend on the local side of things. Your support of local combat sports is what allows us to continue to put on shows. So thank you so much for everything that you've rocked with us so far and for everything that you will continue to do going forward in the future. If you have the chance to buy tickets from any of these athletes, I know that this is the last couple of days for them to have paper tickets in hand. If you can, please do. It definitely greatly helps them. Transitioning from the local weekend preview to the UFC preview. This weekend, we're back in action with a fight night. It's going down in Tennessee. We have a heavyweight showdown between number 9 ranked Derek Lewis taking on number 13, Teixeira. Derek Lewis, by all objective standards, is a large human being, ladies and gentlemen. I've been, right across the table from Derek Lewis. He is all of 6'5" and every bit of that heavyweight limit. A lot of times, often, like we say, he's had to work at times to get to that 265. He is a large man. Teixeira towers him by a few inches. Very rarely do you have someone who will dwarf or make Derek Lewis look small. It's crazy. Between these two guys, they have 17 combined first-round finishes. 8 and 9, respectively. What does that tell you for this fight in the main event? Well, to me, that says don't blink. We know that Derek Lewis is going to be someone who carries power throughout the fight. I mean, one of his most famous knockouts of all time is the Volkov Hail Mary knockout with just seconds to spare in the final round while he was down 2 on the card. Teixeira, he's a little bit younger in his journey. Who knows what that looks like for him later on in the fight? But what I will offer for you is that in the first round, we're going to see one of two things. We're either going to see some explosive exchanges and somebody's going to fall in the process, or it's going to be one of the most boring first rounds that you've ever seen. It's going to go one of those two ways. You have two guys who want to go out there and knock you out, who have that one-touch type of explosive power. Sometimes you see the dance, you see the little do-si-do because neither guy really wants to pull the trigger because they're not wanting to put themselves at risk of getting hurt or clipped on the return. I'm not saying that Teixeira is anything like Francis Ngannou or putting him in Francis Ngannou type of territory. But when we saw someone who also had that type of threatening power right off the rip and Derek Lewis fought them, well, that fight of Derek Lewis and Francis was the worst fight in UFC heavyweight history. And it was because they both respected each other's power too much to really go or to put themselves in danger. I don't know if Derek Lewis feels potentially disrespected by fighting a guy so early in his journey, even though he is still in a main event slot. But, maybe that's a little bit of inspiration there for Derek Lewis. And I think as a whole, collectively at heavyweight, and we'll speak a little bit more on this with some news within the division, there's never been an easier time to really kind of make a run or to try to push yourself toward a title shot at the heavyweight division than it is right now. Obviously, we just had the John situation. Well, that's a never-ending saga, as it seems. But the heavyweight division sucks. In large, there's a bunch of jobbers. There's a bunch of fat guys and guys who should be going down to 205 or who just, as a whole, are not very skilled. There's a core few who are talented and who are the upper echelon of the division, and that's why they have been for quite some time. And then the rest are just bodies. Across all promotions in the world right now, I don't think that you can give me a quality top 15 ranking that athlete for athlete is anywhere near comparable to any other weight class in the sport. It just doesn't exist. There's maybe 20 quality guys, period. quality, and then you're going to say that, oh, world ranked. Come on, man. Let's be for real here. Moving along from that, though, in the co-main event, Wonder Boy not taking that fight against Michel Pereira when Pereira missed weight. I think it's very evident that pissed the UFC off. He didn't get paid. That was the whole controversy in the process that had people advocating for Wonder Boy. But then also, when we look at who he's been matched up with since, he got matched up immediately after that with Shavkat. Was the first guy that Shavkat ever submitted. Or excuse me, was the first time that he was ever submitted. He fought Joaquin Buckley. Got knocked out in that fight. And then now is facing the surging Gabriel Bonfim, who is 17-1. As soon as he came into the UFC by way of the LFA and the Contender Series, he was poised as one of the hot prospects to be that next wave of contenders at 170 pounds. Very tough fight for Wonder Boy right now, especially at this stage of the game, north of 40. Feature fight, you have Calvin Kattar taking on Steve Garcia. Now, Calvin Kattar and his team were mad that Yusuf Zalal wouldn't stand and bang with him, and that Yusuf basically was a matador to his bull rush throughout the entirety of that contest, and he call it for what it is. He got dominated in that fight. But be careful what you wish for, because now he's got a heavy-handed, hard-hitting Mexican in Steve Mean Machine Garcia, who has knocked out his last 5 opponents and has won 14 of his 17 fights by knockout. Mean Machine will stand there and he will slug it out, kill or be killed. That's what you wanted, Calvin Kattar. That's what you and the boys are going to get. Let the chips fall where they may. Anytime that you have Nate the Train Landwehr on a card, it's must-see TV. I don't care who his opponent is. It doesn't matter. Anytime that you see Nate the Train on a card, he's worth watching. You have Vitor Petrino moving up to heavyweight after getting finished in his last 2 fights at 205. He's taking on Austin Lane, which is perceivably a winnable fight. This, to me, is the UFC giving him an opportunity to not go on a 3-fight skid. They obviously thought that they had something in Petrino. He looks like an action figure. The dude could go out there and step on a bodybuilding stage right now. He's just that muscled up, that cut up, so on and so forth. So he has all of the look in the process that they want to try to be able to capitalize on. But he ran into a couple of vets in Anthony Lionheart Smith and Dustin Jacoby, who they said, I don't care how you look. I don't care what your hype is. We've been in this thing for a long, long time, and we're not getting out of the way of where we're at on account of you, buddy. This is a chance, though, right now for him to go out there and get some redemption and get his hand back in the winner's circle. On the contrary, you have Junior Taffa moving down to 205 from heavyweight, and he's going to be taking on Tuco Tucas. Got a couple of my friends that are getting after it in a veteran heavy welterweight showdown. That is Max Payne Griffin and the action man Chris Curtis. Former women's flyweight title challenger Lauren Murphy, who does her camps out of Denver, is back after a 1.5-year layoff. Lauren Murphy is one of those fighters who she's a grinder style. She's not the most flashy, but she knows how to win fights, and she's a workhorse. By the appearances on social media, she is in great shape and ready to get after it in this fight, and I'm excited to see what she brings after that 1.5-year layoff. Kennedy Nchekwu looks to continue his run at heavyweight, which has been successful in his last couple of ventures against Walter Walker, brother of Johnny Walker, who he's riding back-to-back heel hook finishes in general, finishing 2 fights in a row by heel hook. Pretty rare. Doing so in the heavyweight division, even more rare. But it could be one of 2 things. Either Walter Walker is that skilled of a grappler in that division, or, as we kind of talked about earlier, most of those guys in that division suck. So that's why he's able to pull off these submissions in that sort of fashion. Does he have the trifecta and pull off a third heel hook in a row? Let me know. Hit me up on social media. That's at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. That could be on Instagram or on Threads. Going to move along here and cruise through a segment. We are through the halfway point in the year with no show last week. That basically gives us an even split of the 6 months for the year. And we're going to go through some mid-year awards. A couple of these were tough, and there were some honorable mentions that I had to throw in there just to discuss. And then there were a few that were kind of clear cut. A couple that basically stole the show at the 11th hour. Fighter of the year, to me, it's Merab Dvalishvili. Merab is the undefeated bantamweight champion. He has title defenses this year over Umar Nurmagomedov and Sean O'Malley. He's also within this 2025 frame, first half of 2025, broke the all-time UFC takedowns record. Honorable mention is absolutely Ilia Topuria, becoming a 2-division champion. And he's done so in very destructive fashion. The only reason why I give Merab the edge in that particular category is because he has 2 title defenses this year so far. You know, it's 1 versus 2, splitting hairs right there between the 2 of them. Breakout fighter of the year, got to give it to Josh Van. Josh Van went from an unranked flyweight to a title challenger after a grit-filled performance against Brandon Royval just a couple of weeks ago. At UFC 317. He's only 23, training, not fighting, just training for 5 years. And now he's a widely recognized breakout superstar that has global reach. Fight of the year. Again, this one came in at the 11th hour and stole the honors. Fight of the year is Joshua Van against Brandon Royval. A lot of the lore following that fight from many outlets out there is that's the fight of the year so far. And that is an entrant on many of people's top 10 fight list of all time, greatest flyweight fight of all time, and is one that people are already giving early mentions to. Hey, when the time comes, that fight is a UFC Hall of Fame inductee. How that all plays out in the future is certainly yet to be seen, but definitely made a case. I mean, this was a 3-round fight that had a blistering pace, both guys over 200 plus significant strikes. It's still a little bit bitter for me, though, because I think that Brandon Royval should never not be in a 5-round fight. I think that if that fight went 5 rounds, I'm giving it to Raw Dog. People can say that I'm biased. Fine. Cool. I'll accept that one. Knockout of the year. Knockout of the year goes to Mauricio Ruffi, the spinning wheel kick that he had against Bobby King Green at UFC 313 back in March. To me, that's a no-brainer. That's a highlight that will live on in knockout highlight reel history for as long as MMA is around. Beautiful knockout. Sensational. Submission of the year. This one stays with the fighting nerds. Got to give this one to the ninja choke by Gene Silva. That was at UFC 314 back in April. He submitted Bryce, which Bryce is a high-level grappler himself. Bryce being the black belt, then, there was so much controversy and things that were swirling around Bryce Mitchell at that time. And then the back and forth exchanges that him and Gene had. For Gene to deliver in that particular fashion, for Silva to go out there and tech sub him, man, that dude is a problem. Silva could fight for the title right now, and he's an issue. That makes me so excited for his fight with Diego Lopez coming up. I mean, that's a fight that if we're forecasting for the next 6 months, what might be the fight of that 6 months and be a challenger for fight of the year, well, that one's certainly up there. For upset of the year, I hate that it has to be this one again, but you can't not give this one to Josh Van. I mean, if we're being completely objective in this process right now, how do you not give upset of the year so far to the number 12 guy who went in on short notice and beat the number 1 guy? Again, I absolutely hate that I have to give him recognition, praise, honor, so on and so forth for that against a friend of mine. But being objective in the process, that's exactly what it is. Comeback of the year. This one was a bit of a tight one for me, but I give the honors to Alexander Volkanovski. Volk was coming off of back-to-back devastating knockout losses that had many questioning if he should retire and if the Aussie's chin was gone. Well, he made the comeback in a gritty war to reclaim his 145-pound title in a fight of the night against Diego Lopez. That being a title fight, reclaiming the gold against a very dangerous opponent, following back-to-back knockout losses, that gives him the edge for me in that category. But the other person who I'm going to give some praise to and some recognition is Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland had a rough start at the beginning of the year, but he's followed that up with back-to-back highlight reel performance of the night finishes where he's had wins over Gunnar Nelson and Vicente Luque. I think and I've said this pretty much every time, you can go back and look through all the clips whenever we've had a Kevin Holland fight, and based on his frequency, there's probably a lot of times that you could hear me saying in this exact soundbite. When Kevin Holland is inspired, he's a problem. When Kevin Holland wants to fight, and when he is putting in the work in the camp and not just going out there for the paycheck for whatever the toy or the project that he's working on, he's a very formidable threat and a major challenge at 170 pounds. Hopefully, he eliminates some of the distractions and continues on this disciplined path, because I would love to see Kevin Holland make a true run or mix it up with some of these top guys, with it being such a new landscape at 170 right now. Event of the year, it's got to be International Fight Week, UFC 317. Again, there's been some great events throughout the year so far, whether it be pay-per-views or fight nights, but International Fight Week, not just because of the Van versus Royval war, but the Ilia Topuria fight, the Alexandre Pantoja fight, just so many different matchups across that card, whether it was main card to the undercard, thrilling finishes, compelling fights that went the distance. That event definitely gets the honors and the cake for me right there. Got to give OG of the year to Jared Cannonier. The Killer Gorilla is 41 years old. He's still finishing fights in the main event spots. He had a 4th round KO TKO against RoboCop earlier this year. That sets him up against a big fight that he has against the Forever Showman MVP Michael Venom Page coming up in a few weeks at UFC 319. Exciting fight to watch right there. I mean, he's up against it. Speed kills, and Michael Venom Page might be the fastest striker on the roster, skill for skill. Moving along for some ladies' honors here. Got Women's Fight of the Year. I'm giving that nod to Kayla Harrison. Kayla Harrison has had her eyes set on UFC gold from the moment that she put down her Olympic gold medals in judo to transition to MMA. She built her name and platform as a $1 million champion on multiple occasions for the PFL, but she knew that being a UFC champion was what the masses really considered as synonymous as being the absolute best. Well, she etched her name in history by taking the UFC bantamweight title from Juliana Pena, and she's going to have a chance to further cement her legacy as one of the greatest combat athletes of all time when she takes on the consensus lady GOAT in Amanda Nunes. Women's Breakout Fighter of the Year. There's a couple that were worthy mentions of this, like Natalia Silva, making her climb and jump, but I'm giving this honor here to Jillian Anderson. The Savage continues to live up to her nickname's sake. She's won 4 in a row and 6 of her last 7. We've known forever that she's a force to be reckoned with in the grappling department. She's an armbar queen. She's a master of death cuddles, as she likes to say. But the way that she TKO'd Marina Rodriguez in her last fight, who is a known striking specialist, who is somebody who went on a tremendous run just a recent time ago, and she dominated her from pillar to post. And that way she put the entire division on notice. So Jillian Anderson, breakout person for that division there. Prospect of the year, again, Josh Van lighting up the awards on this list right now. At 23 and about to fight for a title, you can't not give him the award. Gene Silva is another one who I considered for this, but again, given the magnitude of what Joshua Van has done and that he's about to be fighting for a title, have to give him that honor. Social media follower of the year, I'm going against the grain and going against my typical, Valerie Loretta or Tracy Cortez or whatever typical, bro answer for this one. And I'm actually going to give you some insight on what I think is a great follow all the way around, and that's Corey Sandhagen. Not just because he's a Colorado guy, but the Sandman has opened up to share some different layers of his personality on his social media and on his YouTube. But why I think Corey is a great follow is there's something for everybody. Whether you're someone who wants to go there for entertainment, well, he's got the skits and all the little funny antics and so on and so forth there. He's got some of the best breakdowns of fight sequences or techniques that any active fighter right now is putting out. And he's very easy to understand as far as the information that he's given to you. He delivers it in a format that you're not going to get lost in the weeds, or at least when I watch it, I don't think so. I think that it's a great channel, great pages to follow all the way around. So again, that's Corey Sandhagen. Podcast of the year, I'm going to give this one to the Jackson Podcast. And it's because of Rampage. Plain and simple. I got to give it to Rampage with his reemergence as a presence within MMA and MMA media. It's a breath of fresh air. Rampage was one of the biggest superstars of his time as a fighter. And his personality is still one of the greatest that we have in the entire space. So that's still being in the mix. I love seeing it because, funny is funny. His co-host, Bear DeGidio, Jackson founder, he's a bit of an acquired taste. Not, you say what you will about Bear, but when you have regular appearances from former champions like TJ Dillashaw and Luke Rockhold, and then you have a nonstop lineup of A-list guests like Tracy Cortez to your Brandon Royvals to whoever else of the hierarchy of today, as well as people of the past in MMA, that's something that's worth tuning into because you get to see so many different conversations and perspectives throughout the years on MMA. Honorable mention, Show Me the Money podcast. The chemistry that they have is undeniable. Just let Moicano cook. Plain and simple. Gilbert is hilarious in his own ways, but both of those guys, both of his co-hosts, they all feed off of the crazy energy that Hanato Moicano brings. Plain and simple, again, let Moicano cook. Story of the year, it's the John Jones saga. It continues. More layers to that each and every day. It's a soap opera. It really is at this stage. Every little turn or every new tweet could be something that throws you for a complete different loop out there. So not for the right reasons, but the John Jones saga, story of the year so far. Team of the year, got to give it to the Fighting Nerds. They may not be a large super team, but the quality that the four horsemen of Kyle Bahallo, Mauricio Rufy, Gene Silva, and Carlos Praches put out there in tandem with the brilliance of their marketing and just, a simple set of glasses with tape around the middle has taken the MMA world by storm. The marketing as well as the performances that they've put on inside of the octagon have set them up for tremendous success in the future, both inside and outside of the cage. As we tie things up here, though, folks, we have one segment left for you here, and it is the one that you have all been waiting for. Dun, dun, dun. Got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards. We're going to go 3 rounds to close out the program. First round, where we at?
President Donald Trump has announced that a UFC event will take place at the White House in 2026. Will this actually happen?
Will this actually happen? That's a question logistically that I think that they're going to have to do a lot to try to figure some things out to make it a reality. Security, feasibility, attendees, all of that, so on and so forth. I mean, it's not completely far-fetched for a combat sport event to happen at the White House. It has happened before. It's been, basically 100 years in that sense. I don't know the exact, can't remember the exact timeline of Teddy Roosevelt's presidency, but Teddy Roosevelt did used to have boxing matches that were out there on the White House lawn. So, like I say, it would not be the first time that there's been combat sports at the White House. It'll just be the first time in a very, very long time. I also find it funny that as soon as this was announced, that it was basically about the most delinquent people on the UFC roster were the ones that were wanting to hop up and jump in right away. Your Connors, your Johns, your all of these guys. The one thing that I found pretty interesting in all of this was, and I think the headline that it was adjacent to this topic, we don't have any American champions right now. If we were to put out one American right now that you were to go say, hey, we need you to go out there and we need you to go win a title and do this. Well, DC himself said that if I had to take the entire crop of everybody in America right now and take all this into consideration, considering the recent controversies and the feud between these two that they've had across the course of their careers, Daniel Cormier himself said, if I have to choose one fighter to go out there and fight at the White House to go get us a win for America, I'm calling a 505 number. I'm calling that man down in Albuquerque. It is a call to one John Bones Jones. That just goes to show that even despite all the bad blood between the two of them, that is the respect of as a competitor that DC holds for John Jones. And John, being that as soon as that was announced, he said, well, I'm back in the testing pool. Maybe it was something that we've talked about it all along for John, in that I believe one of his biggest issues over the last few years is John actually being inspired, being motivated, or having something that really gets him out of bed, if you will. And some people could say, oh, well, it's a title fight, it should do that, or this thing, blah, blah, blah. When you were the youngest champion in history at 23 years old, and when you have fought some of these sports' biggest superstars at such an early age, some of the luster of these new guys, that just doesn't appeal to you the same way. In the sense of like a John Jones, when you win a title at 23 years old against Shogun, who is one of the biggest names ever, still to this, one of the most recognized names ever, do these new guys really get you up? Well, the challenge of then going out there to fight on the White House, or the momentous occasion of getting to fight at the White House, that seems like that could be something that is appealing, that would make John want to actually fight, whether or not it ever happens. Given the saga and all the legal issues of John, who knows? But interesting to see.
Marcus Buchecha is the latest high-profile free agent signee by the UFC. How do you foresee his impact in the heavyweight division?
Even though Buchecha is 35 years old, I think that he can absolutely make a run in the heavyweight division. Striking is going to be his biggest liability, but he is coming into the division right now, by far and large, undisputedly the best grappler that they have. And he has the accolades and the resume to be able to prove it. And especially in considering, the rest of the field outside of Curtis Blades and Walter Walker, and throw Tom Aspinall in the mix as well, those three, the heavyweight division, especially with grappling, sucks. So when you look at somebody like Buchecha, he's won ADCC twice, multiple other podium finishes. To me, that's the most prestigious grappling tournament out there that you can go and win, even above your IBJJF, so on and so forth. But as far as IBJJF and all the other major federations, he has more than 20 other world championships. I'm not talking podium finishes. I'm talking gold. So when we're looking at that resume and those accolades, yeah, he puts himself in a very prime position to go on a run right away at heavyweight. Also, I'm interested in seeing him open up more and more about his woes, or the time with one and leaving from one championship. A lot of people have talked throughout the years about how, oh, the grass is greener in other places, or the UFC is so bad, this and that. But why is it such a common theme for all of these guys who have left or defected from one, such as Buchecha, to Rainier de Ritter, RDR, in the middleweight division, who was a former 2-division champion for that organization, mind you, who have all spoken out against the business interactions, the contractual situations that one presented them. Pretty interesting to see. The grass is not always greener.
Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano run it back for a trilogy in the biggest fight in women's boxing history this Friday. Your thoughts?
Katie Taylor won their first 2 encounters back in 2022. She got the split decision the first time that they fought at Madison Square Garden. Last November at the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson show in Dallas, it was a little bit controversial with the finish. There was the clash of heads, but whichever interpretation that people want to take in as far as intent. But that set the stage for this massive trilogy fight. This is what I would probably venture to say the largest commercial rivalry that's ever existed within women's boxing. I know that there's going to be a lot of eyes just by the nature of it being on Netflix, by having the Jake Paul, by having all of these macro level resources behind them. I'll say this, I've got a show on Friday night, so I won't personally see it, but hopefully they have a decent turnout. So those live events continue to have the financial backing from entities like Netflix and some of those sponsors and so on and so forth. But moreover from that, I just want to give a shout out to Big Mo. Big Mo is going to be the ring announcer for this card. He's had to overcome or had to deal with some family stuff going on in the recent weeks. So, as a guy who comes from this Colorado footprint, who cut his teeth on the Colorado scene, we're all behind you. We all hope that everything works out the best for you and your people in that sense. And also, just what a tip of the ball cap to you, man. Madison Square Garden, where you will be calling these fights and making your announcements this weekend. That is a far cry from the livestock pavilion at the Douglas County Event Center or the Jeffco Fairgrounds Event Center. You know what I mean? So that's a tremendous kudos to you and the growth and the work that you put in to put yourself in a position to be on some of these massive platforms, reaching an international audience. Congratulations to you, Cody. Just like that, we are all out of time, though, folks. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think. There was a variety of topics that we covered. We had a few local shows that we discussed that are going on this weekend. Are you going to be at any of them? Let me know on social media. That's Jordan Kurtz at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. You can reach me on Instagram or on Threads. Want to give a big shout out to my man, Danny Bailey, behind the boards, holding it down for me each and every week. Shout out to the rest of the Mile High Sports crew out there. Again, we got Grapple Games 2 attack bands going down this Friday night. Come and check us out. After that, you can go check out the Sparta show, see everything that's going down this weekend on the Colorado scene. We appreciate your support for this original combat sports programming. We will see you next week, same time, same place. I'm Jordan Kurtz. This is the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports, coming to you live from the number 38, presented by Volo.